President George Weah's re-election campaign was marred by violence even before the elections. The president of the Coalition for Democratic Change, the CDC, wants to run again to be president for another 6 years, contesting against 19 other candidates, plus him making 20 candidates. But how has he performed so far? Now, today, Liberians troop out to choose their next president amidst persistently high levels of corruption and, of course, the cost of living. There are 15 seats in the Senate and 73 in the House of Representatives as well that are up for grabs. Well, joining us to have this conversation, we are now joined by Madam Magdala Cooper, the founder, standard bearer and political leader of the movement for One Liberia Political Party, MOL, in Monrovia, Liberia. Thank you so much, Madam Magdala, for joining us.
Thank you, Blessing. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you join us as well. We also have Miata Yeye Gray, the Executive Director, Sisters Hand, Monrovia in Liberia as well. Thank you so much, Miata, for joining us. Miata, are you there? All right, while we wait for Miata to join us, Madam Magdala, it's Liberia's elections today, and this will be the country's first elections without the presence of the UN mission, which of course supported the country's election commission. What would you say it's like in Liberia at the moment? What's the mood like for the elections?
Well, I've been one of the supervisors of the election in the capital, and I've been observing since this morning. I went in early to get my to cast my vote. But the mood has been good so far. Throughout my drive across the city, I've noticed that people are standing on the lines. The sun is out, it's shining, it's bright. It's a bit hot, but we're used to it. And people are standing there peacefully, waiting their turn to go in and vote. And I've been with my security team, just being called to go to different precincts. Wherever there's a problem, we go in and find a solution to the problem. So far, the peacefulness is what we want and what we hope for.
All right. Looking at how this election is going to be without or is without the UN mission, does this now mean that there are no international observers, that are taking a look at the elections, that are monitoring the elections?
Quite the contrary. We have about 4,000 international observers with us today. And we requested it, and we were privileged enough to have our international partners stand with us to be here and have their presence here so they can keep track of what's happening and how we're conducting this election on our own.
I'm going to ask a bit of a personal question, or let's say looking at the Liberians' opinions from a vantage point. How would you assess people's opinions about President Weah so far? His time in office, what he's done, what he's not done. What are the people thinking about the president?
Well, in 2017, President Weah came in as this Hope for Change candidate, and Liberians were looking for something different. We had a Harvard graduate, an educated woman who had ran the country for 12 years, 2 successful terms, because our terms is 6 years per term. And the Constitution allows 2 terms. And so Madam Early Justice Shirley served 2 terms. She did her best under the conditions she had, I guess at the time. And President Weah came in with this hope, everybody had this hope, especially young people, that he was going to hear them, hear their cries, hear their plea for a leader that will consider them and their aspiration, their plans, their future plans, and create opportunities for them. But for the past 6 years, I will tell you that the people have been quite disappointed in the fact that President Weah found solution to his own personal problems, but abandoned his responsibility as a head of state to find solution to our national problems. And so the young people have been voicing this since the midterm elections, which was 3 years ago. And today, the young people across the country, including the elders and the women, they're just tired with the same old expectations and never delivery on any of what was hoped for. So I think President Weah has a slim chance of winning this election.
So In your own assessment, I mean, I know that he's had 6 years in office, and some will say that he has fulfilled some of his pledges, like the free tuition for undergraduates in public schools. But a lot of others will still lament that he also promised job creation. Like you said, he made a lot of promises, but nothing has been heard or said about that yet. Do you think that people are just being overly sentimental and overly judgmental of his time in office?
No, not at all. I think people have been very considerate of the fact that President Weah, didn't quite have the level of education that Madame Sirleaf had and previous other leaders. But President Weah came in the first 80 days, or I'll say 100 days. He went from being a senator to be worth $85 million, and at the same time, $160 million was missing from our economy. So that was the first step. There are a series of things that happened. The $25 million that came in has a stimulus package to revamp the economy, missing without a trace. Money's missing, a lot of deaths across the country, a lot of resources going out, investors leaving. It has been just in 6 years, there's so much that we have experienced, and it's just a blow at every corner. And so, no, the people are not overly sensitive. It's just President Weah miscalculated the Liberian people. He just totally miscalculated. And he thought he could do a lot of things that the people would just accept because of the fact that he's a celebrity. And the Liberian people have said it to him over and over. Right. No, we didn't select you or elect you because you're a celebrity. We hope that you coming from the ghettos of Liberia, making it to superstardoms, you will at least consider the poor youth, the disabled, the women who have been left behind. They had so much hope, and he just came and enriched himself overnight. He just became this billionaire overnight, or millionaire, multi-millionaire overnight. And his colleagues who had no money had mansions overnight. It was too much for the Liberian people to experience in such a short period of time. And that was the miscalculation they made.
So on their bodies, now talking about the missing monies, I know you mentioned $160 billion. There's a lot of money that, goes missing without a trace. Aren't there bodies in Liberia that can checkmate the activities of the president or the people in administration?
Unfortunately, Liberia doesn't have strong systems and institutions in place. And so when a leader comes in, the leader becomes authoritarian. They possess all the powers. We have 3 branches of government, similar to the United States, the executive branch, the judiciary, and the legislature. And they're supposed to checkmate each other in a sense, for lack of a better word, checkmate each other. But the president and the executive have been trying to buy the approval of those in the Senate who have the vote to veto some of the things that he was putting on the table. But they found a new way to corrupt the legislature by giving them brown envelopes. And so we had now converted our legislature, with the exception of few. There's some still very good senators and lawmakers in the executive who are not corruptible. And so the president have done a great job getting his people in the judiciary to ignore some of the things that he's doing in the executive, passing bills and funds are missing, deaths all over the country. The law and order is out of whack, and Weah possessed all of the power, and so there was no one to checkmate him.
Right. So based on all of this now and the opinions, how the people feel about the incumbent president, how strong would you say the opposition parties are, and are there any major opposition parties that seem to have an edge with the people?
Absolutely. The opposition is very strong, at least the opposition that's led by the former Vice President, Honorable Joseph Boakai, His Excellency Joseph Boakai. He has the strongest opposition bloc, and he has done a wonderful job of creating a sort of tagline or campaign slogan that says the rescue mission. So Joseph Boakai's rescue mission. And he has been bringing in all of the best of Liberia, those who have not been corrupted by the incumbent. He's managed to win over their love, their support, and he has built a very strong opposition bloc called the Rescue Team, the Rescue Mission. And these rescue missionaries, senators, lower house of lawmakers, private citizens, other political leaders, and he has really brought a team together, and they're fighting to rescue this nation. And the people of Liberia are buying into their message. The elders, the chiefs, the women, the youth who were once behind George Weah they have now left Weah and have come over to the Boakai's camp. And so, look, we are a few hours away from the polls closing. It is, according to the polls and all polls across the country, polls that were not manipulated by the Weahs administration, shows that Boakai is going to win this election.
Boakai, I'm glad that you mentioned the former vice president. Now, he was the 29th vice president, and he did run to be president of Liberia, but he was defeated by the incumbent president. What do we say about his credibility? Because in times like this, a lot of people just want hope. They want someone to, outperform the person that is in power, but that doesn't mean that the person is capable. So in Joseph Boakai's case, would we say that he's capable to deliver on the job?
One of the things that His Excellency Joseph Boakai have spoken about constantly in the media across the country, where he goes on his campaign trails, is a reminder of his 40 years spent in Liberia's body politics and also in the private sector. He has a track record that is without corruption. Boakai is not the person that anyone can say he's corrupted or he's corruptible. He sat in the VP position for 12 years under Madame Sirleaf, and towards their second term, there was a lot of conversations being had in the corridors about how their administration has become a little bit corrupted and things were missing in the administration. But Boakai's name never came up in any of those conversations. Boakai came into his vice presidency. He lived in the same house. He raised his family in, his children in. He stayed in the same house. He didn't go ahead and build a mansion with his newfound position. And so the elders, the women, the youth, the disabled community, people with different orientation, all of these individuals start to see him as this new hero. And they know, and he says this all the time on the campaign trail, he is not going to be able to do this job on his own. It will require every Liberian to play their role. So Liberians should not just hope that he has the solution to all of their problems, but he knows that when Liberians are given the tools, they will create the solutions to their own problems. But at the same time, he's going to build an administration, a cabinet that will focus not just on their own personal problem, finding solution to their problems, but also finding solution to the nation's problem. 1 is unity, 2 is the economy, and 3 is the low-hanging fruits, education, healthcare, and infrastructure development.
I mean, it's also quite obvious seeing how, he has served in different capacities. He was the Minister of Agriculture. He was also the Managing Director of a petroleum refinery company. He's acted as Vice President. So it's obvious to see that these people, to some extent, trust him. But still talking about opposition parties, we hear that some members of some opposition parties did opt out of the elections or of the campaigns. Why is that?
Well, look, I'm a private citizen in this country, although I'm a political figure as well. But at the very beginning of this process, we had gone ahead and did a national polling to see who in the opposition had a better shot at defeating Weah. And we got the results. We brought in an international community, group to conduct this survey to make sure it was not manipulated on anyone's, whether it was President Weah, the incumbent, or Boakai, or any other opposition leader. We want to make sure it was done with accuracy in the response from the general public. And so after conducting the national survey, across the board, it was Boakai leading in the survey. And this was about a year ago. The people already decided they were going to go for Boakai. And so we, the political leaders with, following, we had to make a decision. And when we spoke to our colleagues in a political world, registered political parties, institutions, some of them decided, look, we understand President Weah is a major problem for our country. We understand his high level of corruption, the deaths, and there was never an investigation done over the deaths of these individuals in our society. The roads, funds for the roads were missing without roads being built, infrastructure funds, everything was. they decided they could defeat Weah. And we knew because we decided, we did a survey. And so they continue into the first round. Liberia history has shown that most of the time we go for 2 rounds, first round and a runoff election. And they agree that in a runoff election, they're going to come and support Boakai. So we're hoping we'll do this in the first round. But if the country were to go into a second round, we would have more of the opposition leaders on the Boakai side. And that's what we're seeing.
Okay, very quickly, Madam Magdala, as much as it's looking like it's a free, fair and credible election so far, some people are still scared that the country will experience, if not during, but post-election violence. And that's because, of course, what happened, just before the elections. Why would they have that fear of post-election violence?
The population or the citizens of Liberia have that fear because of what has happened over the past 6 years with this incumbent government. Look, Weah being a football player, an international Ballon d'Or, Africa's best, world best, wonderful athlete, wonderful footballer, but not really competent when it comes to the presidency. And so the rule of law has been thrown out the door. The Constitution has been disrespected on several occasions. No one seems to know what they're doing, with the exception of rigging, taking enough resources from our national, resources and utilizing it for their own benefit. So whenever there's a crime and you go to the court, no one cares. If you're not a government official, no one cares. Rape cases went up. Violence against women went up. Drugs, the importation of drugs went up. Violence across the country went up, and there was never justice for the innocent. And with 3 days ago or 2 days ago, we witnessed, we sat here in the country, the president was granted, his party was granted a permission, I should say, to host their closing rally in one area of the Capitol. Another political party was giving permission to host their rally in another part of the Capitol. But the ruling party, the incumbent, decided to infiltrate and go on the side of the other side of town where the other party was giving permission to host their closing rally and disrupted the individuals and started to call them all sorts of names, which is against our election laws. But because it's the incumbent, they could care less. They started calling people all sorts of names that they were not, I can't even mention any of those names on your show here,
Benson. Quite understood.
And this is why the people feel that if Weah doesn't get his way with this election, that he's going to, disrupt this country peace. But the country is a different country. Liberia is a different country from 2017. Weah would be met with opposition that he cannot stand, even though he's a sitting president, but he would be met with opposition. And the whole country is waiting for him to disrupt this peace. We would, the country, they will retaliate. They're not going to sit there and allow an incompetent president like Weah disrupt our peace that we're experiencing in our country. So I would just advise his team to just not even try to do that.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Madam Magdala Cooper, the founder of Standard Bearer and, of course, political leader of the Movement for One Liberia Party. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you as well.